Good afternoon and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing and another installment of Council of the Ones Babylon 5 review. And to everyone that is in the chat, Colin P. Smith, Bureau 31, gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, good to see you once again. And to my fellow council member, Mountains of Elysium. Elysium, good to have you with me once again. Unfortunately, the rest of the council is out beyond the rim exploring, and we wish them well, and we will hold their places for them, and we do miss them, but we are into season 4, episode 2. Whatever happened to Mr. Garibaldi? And of course, this episode is another fantastic. It's to say that every single episode is fantastic is kind of an understatement, but this episode is really one of the more intriguing episodes of season 4 of Babylon 5. And glad to have you all here, and I hope you all enjoyed the discussion. As always, smash that like button, hit that subscribe if you are not already subscribed, and share this out with all your fellow Babylon 5 friends who love the show as much as we do. So, that being said, Elysium, let's dig in, my friend. Whatever happened to Mr. Garibaldi?
This was a great episode. And it's sort of poignant that Jakar seems to be the only one who makes the effort to find Garibaldi, because Garibaldi really was the only one of the few to really stand up for him when the chips were down, giving him the smuggling route. And it's a small repayment that Jakar can do something for him.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show that Mr. Jakar, as he said way back when in season 1, not everyone here is exactly what he or she appears to be. And, I mean, obviously, we have seen a massive turnaround for Jakar, and this episode will be a big nexus event in his story arc, to use a phrase from another show that is currently running on streaming. So, but yeah, it really shows the relationship and the bonds that Mr. Garibaldi and Jakar have formed over the last 3-4 years, or anything, just within the in-universe timeline. And it shows the level of appreciation that that Jakar has for those that he may at one time have bumped heads with or been at odds with, but still over time has come to appreciate and has come to consider a friend, and willing to go out on a limb into a very dangerous situation for him, considering once he leaves Babylon 5, his asylum, his protection is gone.
Yeah.
So,
at least I think it's been. I know I usually listen to Lore Runner before as part of. I'll watch an episode, then get my thoughts, then listen to Lore Runner to see his take on things. And he mentioned that Jakar has to do something. He's very like Ivanova, that Ivanova is in a terrible situation. She's a doer, and she's trapped in some ways, unable to do things. Jakar is exiled on the station. His homeworld is occupied. There's not much he can do, but with Garibaldi missing, he can do something. And this, when you think back, Jakar, when he had the power, he helped Sinclair's, at the time, girlfriend. So this is not out of character for Jakar. I think Jakar was always a good character, but he needed maybe tough situations to break down the maybe some of the bonds that were holding him to another path.
Yes, that is very true. So, well, and as we've and I just want to send a quick shout to the chat, Lewis Cox and LDG of Geeks and Joy Gentlemen. Good evening. Good to see you both. And hope this is a kickoff for a good weekend for both of you. So, and this is a kickoff for a busy weekend here on the Ambassador Wing. Obviously, we're doing this tonight, and then I will actually be over at with my good friend Zach Leary over in Unknown Regions, and we're going to be discussing the films of Richard Donner later this evening. And then, of course, I'll be doing a stream Saturday and Sunday evenings. So it's going to be a busy weekend, but it's going to be a fun one. So, but yeah, getting back into the main topic of the evening, Jakar, he's had a very interesting story arc for the simple fact that he has gone from being a very insular character to being a character that really puts himself out there for others. And that right there shows a great deal of personal growth for the simple fact that he was out for himself and for Narn, and that was it. And now he's willing to risk everything to find his friend or a person that he considers a dear, good friend in Michael Garibaldi. And also to the chat, Conway Gritty. Conway, it is good to see you again. Hope you're having a great evening, and thank you for tuning in once again. And I hope you enjoy our discussions. So, but it's interesting because if you parallel Jakar with Londo, Jakar becomes very inclusive, whereas Londo becomes very insular. For the simple fact that, as Londo says, everything that I've done, I've done for my love of home, for the love of Centauri Prime, for the Republic. But if you look at what Jakar is doing now, even though his people have seemingly lost everything, he is still willing to put himself out there, not just for Garibaldi, but for everyone around him. I mean, he feels the weight of what Ivanova and everybody else on the command staff, well, those that are still around, are going through, and he wants to be of aid. He wants to help, and he knows that he can. This, even though it's going to cost him, it may cost him his freedom or his life. He's still going to do it, because that is the journey that Jakar has gone on within the first 4 seasons of this series. So, anyways, Elysium, that being said, I yield the floor. Your thoughts?
I was just kind of struck. We have Wayne Alexander in this episode, and the more we see some of the characters within Babylon 5, the more another character of his, Mr. Sebastian, is mentioned. Who are the chosen? Those who are willing to die in the dark without fanfare. We have Jakar here. Jakar steps up as one of the chosen. He goes out into the dark, unsung, where no one will see him die, for a friend. And we see Delenn trying the same thing when trying to raise the army, even if she has to go herself. I could imagine Delenn going in a shuttle and using her bare hands to dig down through Zahadum to try and to fight.
Trying to find John. And we can transition because you bring up Wayne Alexander, who played, I think, one of the most. This might be a little bit of hyperbole, but I think it's appropriate here. Lori Inn, one of the most intriguing characters, I would say, in science fiction. I mean, this is truly
agree.
This is truly an intriguing and a fascinating character. I'm kind of remiss now. I never did a video on him, but there's maybe I'll make time somewhere along the way. Who knows? But his interactions with Sheridan and Sheridan's reactions to him. And I will say this: the design of Lorien's appearance is truly intriguing. It's something I've always had an appreciation for, because if you envision the first being to ever gain consciousness in the entire universe, is this what you would envision in your mind's eye that being to look like? And I have to say, to a certain degree, one way or the other, yeah. I mean, I know that Wayne Alexander didn't do a whole lot of have a lot of makeup and everything for his appearance as Mr. Sebastian. It was more costuming than anything. But the head, the facial appliances, the hand appliances, I think he even wore lifts or something, most likely, because he was definitely taller than Sheridan, or at least he appeared to be taller than Sheridan. But the way he moves, the way he acts, the way he interacts with Sheridan, it's straightforward, but in the same way, there's a lot that he's holding back. And you get the impression that this is a being of seemingly immense power. And that's one of the cool things. He's almost like the Babylon 5 equivalent of Yoda. But Elysium, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we get a glimpse of his true form when every now and again John starts to slip and he can see Lorien holding him as an energy being.
Yes.
And I have to agree, Lorien is one of the most fascinating characters in science fiction. And Wayne Alexander plays him absolutely brilliantly. He's in some way, Lorien, I believe, the name comes from Lord of the Rings. From the elves.
Yes, Lorien
Was a woodland and an elven realm.
Yes, yeah. It was
Lord
actually Lothlorien was the realm of Galadriel and not Celeborn. So Celeborn.
My pronunciation is terrible.
Don't feel bad. So, and to the chat, Dennis Medina. Dennis, it is a pleasure to have you here this afternoon or this evening, depending on what time it is where you're at. And well, Dennis, if you're not aware of this, and if you have HBO Max, currently HBO Max has all 5 seasons of Babylon 5 currently streaming. It is a remastered version, but if you have access to that streaming service, or Elysium I can't remember who said, but isn't it also available on Amazon Prime for purchase or rent?
I heard that said. Now I am not sure. I haven't seen it in Europe. We have different. Amazon works different in different countries,
right? So, but yeah, Dennis, if you have access to HBO Max and you want to watch Babylon 5, I highly recommend, if no other reason than that, go get you a subscription for a month and binge B5. You will not regret it. Trust me. And I do want to address Colin's. I do want to address a few comments here in the chat. Colin Paysmith brings up this comment. Yeah, that's something I have a problem with. I just can't get behind the idea that Lorien pretty much just came into existence by passing the whole idea of evolution. Well, here's the thing, Colin. I think if you remember when he has his conversation later on with Ivanova, evolution is never brought up. He simply comes into being like he was manifested by the universe. Now, that does feed into the Minbari perspective of the universe has a consciousness, and to better understand itself, it created life. So in this particular instance, Lorien's race, himself included, was simply manifested by the universe. It was um, it was a sheer force of will of creation by the universe. So it may not fall within the whole concept of evolution, but within the B5 universe, it works. So, but I want to bring up. Let's see. Conway Gritty. Lorien is still not shown as a deity or god. He's actively searching and learning. Yes, Conway, that's not a bad um, observation, because he even understands that he is while he is very old, he is immortal. Basically, he is a being of pure energy. He still realizes that there is much within the universe that he doesn't understand, and he almost finds John to be someone that he can learn from, that he can grow from, that he himself can gain a new and fresh perspective. And I think the interplay between Sheridan and Lorien is a really cool one and everything, because you have this ageless being who has all this knowledge and all this power, but yet he finds Sheridan of interest, where in a manner of speaking, he really shouldn't have, but he does. And let's see. I'll bring up Colin's comment here. Especially when the series suggests that energy beings are the end result of physical evolution. But hey, it's Babylon 5. Yeah. And Colin, I do understand what you're saying, and I can follow the train of thought that you're going down, and I do see the critique, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad one, but again, you have to realize that while part of this show is based on the real world, sort of, it's introducing alien physiology and the concept of evolution and all sorts of exosciences and so on, exobiology. Like, what would happen to humanity in a million years? Would we evolve into beings of pure energy, like the Vorlons and like Lorien's race did, except for, well, at least for the first several batches of. Let's see. I'll bring up Colin's comment here. I get you, but that kind of makes his race a Deus Ex Machina or Deus Ex Universalia. Yeah, I could see that, Colin, but at the same time, it doesn't diminish my enjoyment or my appreciation for the character of Lorien, because he does add a lot, and he has, while his time on his screen time in B5 is limited, it's very memorable because he has several really interesting conversations with Sheridan, with Delenn, with Ivanova, and so on. So, but Elysian, I've kind of rattled off at the mouth here. Your thoughts on anything, my friend?
I was actually thinking that rather than Lorien just coming into being, the universe itself was said to be conscious. Mm-hmm. And I think that the universe itself evolved before it came to Lorien, and its first act was to create something like itself, break a part of itself off, and then it realized, yeah, there's still a lot to learn, because how do you get to the end point? Mm-hmm. And Lorien himself said that as they grew older, the younger ones began to die. They had shorter lifespans, so the universe decided, you know what? For me to learn more, I have to take a step back. You don't come to the end. You don't buy a finished jigsaw puzzle. You want to make that jigsaw puzzle, so it broke itself up and allowed the pieces to assemble and broke itself up again, and allowed the younger races to, in somewhat invented evolution, to see what would happen. Almost as if, a mind so vast would find something like that interesting, watching races evolve, grow old and die, or evolve and become something that almost equal to Lorien himself. And I think the universe would find fascination with that. And that's why we get Lorien at the end stage, the first ones, because that's where the universe was when it began to search. and I realized through Lorian's eyes, we need to break it down even more.
Yes.
And that was my understanding. So Colin's point is very valid, but I
Yes.
think you could look at it another way.
Well, I'll bring up Colin's comment here. It's indicative of how well thought out the series was. The deviations from what we know of science stands out so much. And I agree, he is a great character. Yeah. I mean, Straczynski knows the rules well enough that he can play with them to where it's not going to break the immersion. It's not going to break our enjoyment of the story that's being told. And it's really a credit to Straczynski as a storyteller, as a writer, that he can create a character like Lorian or even like the other first ones. And it doesn't ruin the experience, because let's be honest here. The introduction of the first ones, like the Shadows, like the Vorlons, like the Lorian, and the other first ones races that we see, shouldn't have worked in a hard science fiction series like Babylon 5. And yet, it does. Because it's almost crossing that border from science fiction into science fantasy. I mean, if you take a look at, say, for instance, a movie that I'm going to be covering later this weekend with Stargate, it crosses that line from hard science into science fantasy, kind of like with Star Wars, but yet it still works. Or with the introduction of Q in Star Trek The Next Generation. Again, it's crossing that line from hard science fiction into science fantasy, but it doesn't break the immersion of the series. And that, for me, is what that's one of the reasons why I love B5 as much as I do, is because it's got enough hard science fiction, like regular science fiction, like Trek fiction or something like that. Or I'll bring up Colin's comment here with Robert Heinlein. Different levels of existence, a concept addressed in several science fiction series. Heinlein's Job and Smith's Vortex Blaster come to mind. I've not read either one of those, Colin, so I'm going to concede to your your knowledge of that, and I'll just say cool, and I'll bring up Beer 31's comment here.
Really, really great comments from the chat.
Yeah, I agree. Beer 31. I read some about Nietzsche's Overman. It's very similar to what Lorian teaches Sheridan. Lorian is Zarathustra. That I get because I have read a little bit of Nietzsche myself. Beer 31. We kind of had to for seminary, so yeah, I do. I do get that concept. So yeah, Beer 31. I can agree with you on that one most definitely. And I'll bring up Conway's comment here. I'm glad they didn't overuse Lorian. His scarcity made him more mysterious and interesting when we do see him. Perfect balance by JMS. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of like the same principle with Yoda. Or, let's see, what's another good one? We'll just use Yoda as an example here. The less we know about him, the more intrigued we are by him. I mean, yeah, we've seen Yaddle and we've now seen Grogu, but we still don't know a whole lot. We don't even know the species' proper name, for heaven's sake. And that's what makes that character so intriguing. I mean, yeah, we saw a little bit more of him in the prequel movies. Yes, that is true. But still, there's so much about Yoda's species that we don't know, and that's what makes him so intriguing. And the same is true here with Lorian. And I love how Lorian is employed in this particular story, and in particular in this particular episode. He is a mirror for Sheridan to look into and have to face what he's going to have to do to win the war against the Shadows. Ambassadorling the Furlings.
Oh, yes.
I can't.
They're from Stargate. They're a race that were always mentioned, but you never saw them. Apart from in in one episode where O'Neill hallucinated seeing Ewoks, I think.
Okay. Colin, I can't say I've ever heard the Furlings. I mean, I'd have to do a little research on that one, to be honest with you. So, but I'll look it up I'll look it up later. So, I'll bring up his other comment. The first ones are a very clever reminder that our entire history is only a very small part of the age of the universe. Sagan's cosmic year. Anyone? Yes, I do get that concept, Colin. Carl Sagan. Yeah, the cosmic year. Yep. I've read little pieces here and there of Carl Sagan. Not a whole lot. I should read more of him, considering as much of a sci-fi nut that I am. So, and I'll bring up Lewis's here. The first ones are kind of inspired by Lovecraft, which is yeah. Yeah, Colin, I know I brought up Stargate. I was thinking I'm going to be doing a review of the movie Saturday night. So, but it's been a while since I watched the series, so I guess I missed that particular one. Yeah, but Lewis Cox, he does bring it. Yeah, the first ones, they do have a Lovecraftian aesthetic or vibe to them a little bit. It's not so much existential cosmic horror per se, but they are something that's big and frightening and uber powerful, and we would just be woefully unable to contend with. Let's put it that way. But, in terms of what I was saying earlier about Lorian being a mirror for Sheridan and him having to kind of push John to let go, and in essence also push Kosh to eventually let go as well. So, Elysium, your thoughts on that particular part of this episode?
Yes, but it was. I'm trying to think here that Lorian. It's almost like within the Christian ideal that sometimes for God to work because of free will, you have to take the first step for Sheridan to move on. I was trying to think, he was so afraid of dying he couldn't conceive of a chance of living. And Lorian helped him to let go, embrace the moment. And he did turn to Lorian, I believe, and say, "Will you catch me?" And that he gave up himself, but he put his trust in something greater. And we see what happens after. He becomes more.
Yes. Well, and Lorian said, "I caught you once before. I will catch you again." I'm kind of paraphrasing, obviously. But I love the metaphors that Lorian uses when he's trying to reason with Sheridan and say, look, you are trapped between tick and talk, life and death. And here's the interesting thing that I don't think anyone has actually ever picked up on. Or maybe y'all have, and if you have, that's cool. Lorian is most likely the one that is holding Sheridan between life and death. Or it could be even perhaps the fact that Kosh is still attached to Sheridan's soul that isn't allowing him to pass on. And I find it incredibly intriguing that whether it is Lorian with his powers and his abilities, or if it is the remnant of Kosh that is within Sheridan that is holding him in between life and death. And it could be a combination of the two. Maybe Lorian and Kosh are holding Sheridan because they realize that he has the opportunity to break the circle. Because here's the other point that we haven't really discussed yet, but we can. When Sheridan asks Lorian, do they know that you are here? And did Kosh know that you are here? And Lorian says yes. He's like, they come back here out of a misplaced sense of respect, when in fact, I would rather that they just move on. He's like, he's like, any parent hates to see their children fight. And to Lorian, the Vorlons and the Shadows are his children. And he feels maybe, I think, in some respect, a sense of failure or regret. And that's why he too has remained. Because he's been waiting for someone that can help him break the cycle that everybody has been caught in. So, go ahead, Elysium, please.
I was just thinking that both Sheridan and Kosh are afraid of dying, of passing on. Kosh himself said as much when he had his death scene a few episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And both are trapped between Tik and Tok.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Kosh letting go helped hold Sheridan in place and maybe made him and somewhat maybe made him visible to Lorian. I wonder, would Lorian have noticed Sheridan had he just been Sheridan?
That is honestly a very good question. And I do want to address the chat. And Louis X Sparrow, Louise, it is good to see you. Thank you for, even though you're late, a wizard is never late. They arrive precisely when they mean to. So, Louise, good to see you as always. So, and I do want to bring up Bureau 31's comment here. But if I fall, how do I know you'll catch me? I caught you before. But if I die, I cannot create life, but I can breathe on the remaining embers. It may not work, but I can hope. The Bureau 31 says it here. Hope is all we have. And that's very true.
And I just felt it was wonderful that coming from Lorian himself, the first one, that it shows he himself he's almost telling John, I'm not God. I'm not God, capital G. I'm not God, lowercase g. Hope is something he himself has. He hoped he would meet someone who would come to meet him on his terms, not out of a, like you mentioned, out of a false sense of worship or hero worship. Sheridan met Lorian almost an equal footing. It doesn't matter that there's billions of years between them. Lorian almost treated Sheridan with enough respect to speak to him as an equal, even though he knew he may not understand the concepts.
But here's the crazy thing. Sheridan, we have talked about on numerous occasions as being more of the soldier type, the full steam ahead type. But in this particular instance, his more combative nature is almost a aid to him. Because when he pushes Lorian and Lorian pushes back, he finally realizes who and what Lorian is, because he keeps having that dream. Who are you? What do you want? Who are you? What do you want? And when Sheridan pushes him that one time, and Lorian pushes him back, and Sheridan finally realizes you're a first one. You can help me. It finally clicks. And he finally realizes that if he's going to succeed in doing what he has to do, he has to let go. But he doesn't let go of everything. He hangs on to the one thing that means the most to him. And that is love.
It was a poignant thing that he said that there's many things you could find to die for, but what can you find that's worth living for?
Exactly.
And that actually is far more, that is something that caught me. I'm going, actually, yeah. I mean, you can, and it goes back to Sebastian, who were the chosen. He, many people or many who claim to be leaders are willing to, in somewhat Lord Farquaad, many of you will die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to make the grand gesture themselves. So look what I'm doing, I'm willing to die for you. Much as how Jakar was earlier, before he goes looking for Garibaldi, where he takes the same road that Sheridan does, willing to work as small in the dark. And it is profound that what's worth living for? What will you fight for? What will you stay alive? What will you endure to do? And enduring is far more difficult than dying. You can make a single gesture and do something, but can you stay working, slaving in the dark in the hopes that your children or your grandchildren will one day be free? Which is basically, in some ways, what that question can imply. What's worth living for? I live to give my children a chance. I live to, you know, simple thing. I live for something. It could be a simple thing or it could be that grand gesture.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very profound that the chosen within the series all seem to follow. They're willing to die, willing to throw it all, but they find something worth living for.
Yes. I mean, because they learned from Sheridan. And, I will get to this in a couple episodes when we have um, the episode with the whole issue with Yulkesh. But to kind of just stay here in this particular episode, the one thing that Sheridan is willing to live for, or willing to lay his life down for, isn't necessarily the cause. It's Delenn. But for him, Delenn is the cause because him and Delenn are partners, and now more so, they are a couple. They are together. And she is the face of the thing that he is willing to lay his life down for. And that, it's rare for us as people to find someone that we truly are willing to share our life with. But it's an even grander thing to find someone that we would be willing to lay our life down for. And for Sheridan to take that leap of faith, even though there is no guarantee, as Bureau 31 said, hope is all we have. Sheridan was holding on to the hope that he would see a Delenn again. Not fight the shadows, not fight the Vorlons, but simply the hope that he would see the woman that he loves again. And that's the beautiful thing about this particular episode. Just as Jakar takes the leap of faith, hoping that he can help find his good friend, Mr. Garibaldi, and that he can bring him home. And even though he sort of fails and gets captured by the Centauri, what is the one question on his lips when he is standing before Londo and Emperor Cartagia? Would you happen to have seen? Do you happen to know where Mr. Garibaldi is? Doesn't care about himself or his own welfare or well-being. He's worried about his friend, Michael Garibaldi. And to the chat, our fellow council member, not here with us, but here all the same, Lord Koj. Good to see you, my friend. And yeah, that hope.
His channel link
please.
is a little further up, so subscribe to Lord Koj.
Yeah, everybody, Elysium, my wingman here, my fellow council member, he has included the links to everyone, whether they are present or absent, that makes up the Council of Ones. So I encourage you all, go subscribe to every single member of the Council of Ones, because they all have very good channels. These are all creative and they are hardworking people. They put out good content, and they are worth your time, and you will be enlightened, entertained, enriched, and you will maybe just have a good laugh every once in a while. So, but Beer 31 or Beer 31, Lord Koj, good to see you. But I will bring up Beer 31's comment here. Lorianne, do you have anything worth living for? Delin, sleep now. I will catch you if you should fall. Yep. And Lorianne echoes those same comments. So, and chatting it up, Chad, good to see you. Pleasure to have you join us this evening or this afternoon, depending on what time it is where you're at. So, I love Jakarta's journey, his conversation with Marcus. I've never had a friend who wasn't a Narn before. I've never had a friend who was a Narn. Yeah, we sometimes forget that Marcus Cole does make an appearance in this episode, and he does help out at least a little bit. And I will say the little comedic exchange when they're singing that little hut or shanty or whatever it is, and Marcus pulls out his Minbari fighting staff, and Jakar pushes the button and he says, I like it. And Marcus is like, oh, you've just got Pikel envy. I'm sorry. I could not help but laugh. So, no. And hey, Koj, it is okay, man. You got to take care of your pet. We understand. So, and I'll bring up Colin's comment, and then Elysium, I'll let you have the floor. Just had a thought. Sheridan's story and part of Jakar's arc. Answer the question. What are you willing to do to achieve your goals? The other question asked of Matthew Gideon. I'm not exactly sure who Matthew Gideon is. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't Gideon the guy off of Crusade?
Yes, he is. That's something that should be looked at. That was killed way too soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, we will get to Crusade in due course, folks. Do not worry. So, and Chad, good to have you here. As always, it's a pleasure. So, I hope you enjoy the stream, and of course, catch the replay later. So, but yeah, I did. Let's see, Koj. Crazy. If Marcus prevented Jakar from being captured, he may have saved a friend, but Jakar would not save his world. Proves we are where we need to be more than we know. Yep. That's very true, Koj. Well said. Oh, Gideon was a techno mage. I didn't know that. Oops.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. Oh God, I'm a little tired yet. Gideon, I think was.
No, wait. Mage. Well, he chatting a chat and anything. He shows up in the Babylon 5 Lost Tales. Okay.
Yes, and he's also.
I never got a chance. Okay. Oh, Galen. Okay, Galen. Matthew Galen or Matthew Gideon. Galen was the techno mage. Yes, yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you, Louise. Excuse me. all this time I've been saying it wrong, but then somebody called her my dear, so I'm guessing all this time it's been Louise. So
They'll be doing Sheridan and Sinclair with Gideon and Galen, I believe.
probably more than likely.
I think
Yes, Koj, you are correct. Played by Gary Cole.
yes.
So
I was just thinking there that
mhm.
when Jakar was I believe that message, have you seen Mr. Garibaldi? That was a message to Londo, who also knows Garibaldi. Look for him. Our friend is in danger.
Yeah, except Londo never does.
No, he doesn't. I think, though, to be fair, Londo is dealing with the same issues that is happening on the station. There's much greater than one man. He has, they have to deal with a monster. Well, actually, no, he's a fine young fellow. You can just see him there in the avatar.
And to the chat, Tim talks. Kylo Tim, good to see you, bud. Pleasure as always. Chatting. Are y'all going to be discussing the books and the comics? I might put those streams together, but I'll let the rest of the panel discuss them because I never had the opportunity to read either one, unfortunately. So,
And I
but
was the same. I think Koj and Vienna have seen, have read them.
And I think Classic has as well. So
Yes.
I'd have to check with him. So, but yeah, if y'all once we get done with the series proper, if y'all would want us to cover the books and the comics, I'd be more than willing to facilitate that. I'll just sit back and be a I'll just be a passive bystander, or I'll sit back and be a student and just learn from y'all.
Actually, just a quick thing. Another, just even tie. It just shows how this whole series ties in. Have you anything worth living for? It just felt like Jakar is given that reason for living, where he's told by Londo he will have to endure terrible suffering, but at the end, his people will be free. And exactly. I did like that Jakar realized that both he and Londo were not in strong bargaining positions, but they were in strong enough positions to give each other their entire worlds. Jakar could free Centauri Prime by his enduring, and to be honest, Londo's enduring of watching someone, what he wouldn't consider a friend, someone he in some way cares about, seeing the suffering he will go through. And we see what happens with in later episodes, that what they do to Jakar is beyond cruel. And Londo is horror. Poor Veer is weak. No, I'm not saying weak as a person, just weak with horror. And Londo has to hold his head up and look at someone he probably is beginning to really care about being tortured to death in front of him.
Yeah.
And he's just screaming under his mouth, scream, scream, please scream.
Yeah.
And it will come up when we see Londo's long night, and his conscience tells him, you shouldn't have just mouthed it, you should have spoken. But that's Londo's own conscience at the time, realizing that I should have spoken. Even though that would have ended with Londo being killed, Centauri probably staying under a monster, and Narn staying where it was. That's something Londo had to endure, and his conscience kills him because he had to stay silent. He had to endure that. And maybe his scars run deeper because he never, he ended up with with the Keeper and never gave him a chance at redemption until the end.
Yeah.
And he had to endure that. This show, just things tie in.
Yes, and they tie in very beautifully because, well, JMS was a master story. Excuse me, he's not. He's still with us. JMS is a master storyteller. He truly is. I would love to see him do something else. I mean, I know he's not exactly a spring chicken, but he's not exactly too long in the tooth to where he couldn't potentially do another series or something. I mean,
I just to say that I think there may be a possibility because I know where the tweet was. People were tweeting at him, "Why isn't there a good Babylon 5 video game?" And he says, "No one's approached me. You know where I am." He may still have the rights to a video game, so he may be able to tell another story from the Babylon 5 universe in a video game setting. I'm only
the
guessing,
question
just going by
is,
what he said.
what would be the genre? I mean, do you want to do like an open world type of game, like a Skyrim, but except it's space? I mean, that's the real trick of it. I mean, because adapting a show like Babylon 5 for a video game, it's tricky. It's
Yes.
like adapting. It's like adapting Star Trek. I mean, because there's so many different angles that you can come from with that.
I think the war against I think it's mentioned. I actually have to watch those movies again. The War Against the Hand, the kind of offshoot of the Vorlons, I believe who they were.
Mm-hmm.
That was the next thing after the Drac in the universe, and so maybe something set there a little after. So we get some of that universe more fleshed out, and although then again, it's like mentioned with Lorien, does the lack of too much mention give them greater mystery? Where if they're front and center in a game, or in a story, or in a movie, or in something, will that steal their mystery?
Yeah, exactly. And I've got Conway's comment here. In all sci-fi, I've never seen a more perfectly cast, written, or performed duo than Londo and Shakara, from beginning to end, emotionally complex and flawless. It's why it's my favorite show. Conway, I I can't say I disagree with you. I mean, as I've said a few times before now, I've spent nearly a year and a half covering this show, and I love having these conversations with everyone, whether they are new, whether they are a longtime fan of B5, or they are just getting into it. It is nothing but a treat and a pleasure to share my love, to have these conversations, whether it's with the full council or just one or two of you, and to have everybody that's in the chat and everything sharing your comments and your thoughts on this show is truly a treat, because it does lend credence to my position that certain pieces of media are truly timeless. And regardless of the visual effects, it is good story, it is good character development, and it is intriguing and thought-provoking storytelling that is truly timeless. So, and I do want to say to the chat, LDG of Geeks and Joy, always a pleasure to have you here, my friend. And if I'm free later this evening, like I said, I've got another stream later after this one. If I have time, I will most definitely pop by and say hi to you. So, LDG, you have a good night either way, and I will catch up with you later. And I'll bring up Conway's comment here real quick. Mass Effect is very Babylon 5 inspired. I would say to a degree, yes, Conway, that is very true. Yeah, I would say that is not too far off the off point. So, and then Colin, I'll bring up his comment here. Chatting it up, that's the one. It's where they're having the statues. They're not turning away from each other. They're watching each other's backs. Yeah. Yeah, they're talking about the book series. So, well,
I'd love to read those books.
I have never had, honestly, I've heard people talk about the books, and I never had the opportunity to read them. I never even got a chance to get my hands on them. And now that I imagine I could find them if I dug hard enough, but I just right now I don't have the time. So, but I think we're going to wrap up here in just a minute, Elysium. So, if you have any final thoughts on this episode, the floor is yours, my friend. Go ahead.
I think it's just a brief vision of Garibaldi in that prison, and the Psychor officer, well, assumed to be Psychor, who walks
We
in when
know
they got.
we know who it is.
Yes, it's
Mr. AB.
yes, or to be true to his name, was it Stephen Dexter, I believe is his true name. That's I did read up on it, was that Bester was an assumed name to hide his true identity, because his parents were rebels. And it's sad that indoctrination leads to one of the greatest characters, but a pretty flawed and evil character.
Mm-hmm.
And although maybe he would have been the same without it, but was it nature or nurture that created a monster?
Yeah. And actually, well, and Chad, I don't mean to be a nitpick, but it's passing through Gethsemane. It's not strolling through; it's passing through Gethsemane, but it's a small little thing. So, but do want to let you all know we're going to be doing things a little bit differently for the next couple of weeks, because Elysium's going on holiday, as they say across the pond. So we're going to be doing some pre-recorded reviews and everything with the council, and we'll be doing those as live premieres. I will keep everybody updated when those come out. We're going to try and do these at least for 2 or 3 weeks while Elysium is away and everything, because we don't want to deprive you all of these, because we know you all look forward to these and we enjoy putting them out for you. So I will keep you all apprised on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, as to what we're doing in terms of the next batch of reviews. So, but as always, I want to thank everybody for tuning in this afternoon and / this evening. And of course, if you catch this on the replay, make sure you leave your comments down below with anything that we brought up during the review, and just add your comments to the conversation. And we will be back next week, either live or recorded, with another installment of the Council of Ones. And Elysium, before we go, have you got anything coming up on your end of thing, on your channel or your channels that you want to make mention of?
I keep saying I think I'm just so busy at work, I haven't been able to put too much into it. I have I've been doing a series on the best characters, from the best one-off characters, recurring characters, supporting staff. I have the main cast video done. I am working on, because I left out Timov out of the list of best one-off characters, I said she deserves to be part of a list, so I've made a second video, which I still have to record some of the dialogue of best one-off characters part 2. I have video on the works, the who was the first, a Back to the Future video, who was the first to time travel, and just discussing, was it Einstein because he was the first observed, or was it Marty who was the first to travel back, or was it some other characters? How do you define who was the first? And just play around with the idea. And I think I've one or two others on the go as well, but it'll just take me having some time to sit down, put them all together. I want to build up a stock of maybe 6 or 7, and then put them out one a week. So that gives me time to make more and make my channel more for regular content.
Excellent.
Because it's been 3 months since I've put out anything.
Yeah, and believe me, I do understand that life gets hectic, does it crazy. I just wanted to address a few of the comments, and then we are going to wrap up. Colin, I do have a Discord account. Do I have a Discord for our group? No, I don't. And unfortunately, I'm part of several Discords that I woefully neglect participating in, unfortunately. So, but I do have a Discord account if you want to reach out to me there. Give me just a minute. I'll tell you what my Discord handle is. 2 seconds. I think it's Ambassador Kosh or something like that. I just got to get to it. Come on, open faster. Duration. Come on. While I'm young and still capable of procreating, for heaven's sake. Come on. Oh, for Pete's sakes, go away. Sorry about that. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Colin, if you're still here, my Discord handle is the Ambassador hashtag 0719. So if you want to look me up on Discord and connect with me, there you go, bud. So, and yeah, I'll bring up Chad's comment, and then we will close out. So, if y'all can come over and sub to mine, it's pretty new and still raw. I'm focusing on geek culture content, staying positive, not getting in any drama. Chad, count on it, absolutely. And Chad, I'll reach out to you because I've got a couple of Twitter groups that one that I put together and one that I'm a part of and everything that will help get you on your feet and get you going and everything on this thing called YouTube. So, and Chad, thank you for tuning in to this evening. I hope you enjoyed yourself. So, but anyways, folks, as we often say here as we close out, you all have a great evening wherever you are at. And this is the Council of One saying 3, 2, 1. Zoot, zooty, zoot, zoot. Good night, everybody.